Recycle. Hey Planet Earth, Untamed Druid again. Just coming at you live with another video, calling this one Decoding Communication. So I'm a non-trained, like I'm not college trained person. Yeah, I've said in previous videos that I did drop out of college, but it's not because of my lack of mental ability to process what they're trying to teach in schools. More of a rejection of the idea of being required to go through seemingly purposeless like busy work. If you've been to school and you've noticed, hey, a lot of this stuff that we're doing isn't important. It doesn't really impact my specific knowledge of a given situation or topic. Most of the time, the things you learn in school are socialized, and they imply that basically that like once you get a degree, you're just better than people that don't have a degree, even though that there's nothing substantiating that. It's just all that the piece of paper means is that you went to the school. So it's like we have this good system, because we need to be able to check people. We need to be able to look into people, like, where did you go to school? It's like it's a basis of regulating what we allow into our own lives. But then once we get to the point of you don't have to be a smart person. You can just be rich, go to school because you know somebody that did, or you can afford it, and then you just exist in the world and you have a degree. And it's like, yeah, but you have no real world experience and you didn't pay for it. So it's like we've got these people that don't have any qualification to even have access to this knowledge. There's no seeking. It was just part of their plan in their life. So we've got a bunch of false teachers, basically, that don't really stray from the curriculum. So for me, being someone who's really interested in psychology, I took philosophy classes, and did I take a psychology class? I think I took a psychology class, but I was more computer science and math and art. So, but psychology was always interesting because it's like the study of how individuals are thinking within their own minds without them directly speaking it. So being able to tell, if somebody's a devious person based on how they're communicating, that's really what interested me in psychology. Because it's the world's kind of crazy because everybody's got these masks, and you never know how deep the masks go. You never really know if you're talking to somebody genuinely, just because of how schizoid we've become, by all of these requirements that are not actual requirements. So I'm not against people becoming teachers. I'm not against people going to school. We still, the regulations are still in place, and you still need the piece of paper. But to me, it just kind of delegitimizes you, because it more shows that you're willing to do things that don't benefit you in the short run, so that in the long run people will see you as credible, instead of you actively or actually knowing what you're talking about, instead of showing that you're committed to being a certain thing. It's like that doesn't, especially in psychology, it doesn't matter if you're committed to being a psychologist. It's like you can practice psychological studies or analysis as being a construction worker, or a garbage man, or person. So that's the interesting thing about psychology. And then, like, different topics, like going to school for art, it's like you don't need to go to school for art. It's like none of most topics don't require, like a 4 year sit down, study, turn in homework kind of learning experience. Those things just, those are just ways to qualify, uh, what's going on. Like, to make sure that the person showed up and participated, which again is not important except for to show the commitment that that person has towards whatever, they're learning in a way where, um, yeah, not that it delegitimizes in itself, but it is not legitimate. It's legitimate because people take it seriously and they, engage it in a way where they're actually trying to get something out of all the money that they're spending. But it's or unlegitimate, not legitimate, in the way where it's only off of the goodwill of the people participating in the system that the system, is worth anything. So it's like, it's not that the system's teaching us anything or like how to be good people or how to be good doctors or psychologists. It's based on the individual to become a good, psychologist or doctor, artist or mathematician or whatever, and if it's not inside of that individual to become a good, practitioner of whatever they're learning, then, they just won't be good at it, but there's no tapering system or whatever, in college, so there's no testing the actual metal of people, which is all that real world experience is. So, it's not that there's a problem with college, but it detaches people so much. And then you've got this piece of paper that says that you're smarter than people in a certain topic. And it's like, well, that's not even true. Like, it doesn't matter if you have a degree. What matters is, how you communicate with people and how you understand the things around you. Um, because if you view everything around you as something to be used or manipulated, that's very important. And especially to people besides you, so, yeah, being someone who's, experienced, um, I don't want to say blackmail, but, betrayal by friend groups or whatever, and it's not really betrayal, it's just, people moving on. But, really being able to tell how people, view themselves, the world around them, and the other people that they interact with, it's it's something that could have saved me specifically a lot of heartbreak or tough times, if I would have been more psychologically inclined. But then there's no, we again, with college is also a haven of specialization, which prevents people from understanding that like everything exists in the same world, so everything's connected. So specialization is specifically ignoring the fact that everything's connected. So it's like, you can be good at science if you're good at math because you know the math so you can understand the science, and it's like you can't really be good at science without math, and you can't, do the science without the math. So it's like, or you can't, there's no practical application of the math. Like the science is the practical application of it. So it's just like all of it's combined in, and there's no separating it. And the school puts in this divide where it's like, now you're a psychologist, and it's just like, well, what does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything. It just means that you have this little placard that just says, I only know things about this, and it doesn't even necessarily reference your knowledge of a given topic. It's just more of a, I was at school for 12 years in this subject, and it's like, and that's really all that it says. And then when you've got, universities pushing, diversity programs and things, it's not that, I said in previous videos, I, align myself with being a member of the LGBTQ plus community. Um, uh, and so there's no problem with, kind of the things that they're teaching in schools these days, with pronoun use and, you know, they, them, and he, she, and Caesar, and all of those things. There's nothing wrong with those things. It's just the matter or the manner in which uh, they're not acknowledging the the implicit ideology that exists within pronoun use. So it's not that there's a problem with pronoun use, and it's not that there's a problem with having it being taught in schools. I think gender studies are important. I think I think it's important to listen to everybody and to take everybody seriously. But as soon as you're telling somebody what they can and can't say, it's not that if I don't necessarily use pronouns, because I identify as spirit, if you want to know. So I don't identify physically necessarily. So for me, I don't use pronouns ever. So for someone to say you have to use my pronouns specifically, I just don't use pronouns in general. So it's like, well, for me, it's literally forcing me to say something that I never say. Like regardless of who I'm talking to, I do not use pronouns at all. So, this, well, you have to use these pronouns. It's like, I don't use pronouns, so if people are going to get upset because I don't use pronouns, it's like, right, see, you're getting upset because of how I use language, and it's not even harmful, it's not hurtful, it's just, I just don't use pronouns. And if you're going to be upset that I'm not using a pronoun, or something like that, I guess I understand the difference between misgendering someone and, just not using pronouns. But I guess, with your extreme people, there's no distinguishing this, so yeah, just me ranting about why school sucks. So I just can go on and on. I guess I'll give a little story. I went to what class? It was I was in game design, like video game design, right out of high school. And I'm not the best student, but I'm not a bad student. And the teacher in class one day gave an assignment and was just like, yeah, go back to your rooms, like go back to your dorms and draw what your dorm looks like, but make like just make it a scene, like draw the whole landscape of it. And it doesn't really matter the quality of the artwork that you're doing, because this is more just for a just your basic ability of gathering and presenting an entire scene on a piece of paper. So that was the assignment. I go back, do that, and then go back to class the next day. But how I did it, I drew everything in pencil, and then did it had really hard shadows, the drawing that I did. So they're like, it has my bed, and the top of the bed has light on it. So I used colored pencil for the areas with light, and then the areas of shadow I used marker. So if you just look at it, it kind of looks like this crazy picture, but it was exactly what I was asked to produce. And she said specifically that the quality of the artwork that you produce does not matter, because it's just being able to produce something. So I go back to class, and the teacher specifically like targets me and calls me out for not trying, or not participating, or not reaching my potential. So calling me out because of what she perceived as the quality of the work, even though I thought it was a good piece. And then also, she specifically said that it was not based on quality. So I, don't necessarily conform. So it was as if she saw that I was not a school person, and targeted me and made me be ostracized by my group, even though continuing the story, I stayed in the class, obviously, and I came up with, now there's going to be lots of, no, you didn't, but I came up with the idea for Sausage Party, the Seth Rogen movie, the animated movie about hot dogs and stuff. I came up with a basic idea like that. Not that it's complex or anything. It's just a hot dog that rolls around and becomes alive. And see, my idea was that somebody left a hot dog in the fridge for too long, so it got moldy, and then the mold allowed consciousness to form, because I believe that mushrooms have a large impact on consciousness. But and that was the basis of my story. And then he finds toothpicks for arms and legs, and gets poked in the eye, so he's missing one eye and he's got an eye patch on. I basically developed this whole story with this whole character, and like I got to the point where he was trying to get out of the refrigerator, and I presented this as a concept piece, to the class, and not the class. The class was like, oh, I mean, that's just an idea. The teacher literally like tore me apart, saying how it was a childish idea. It was dumb, and I'm wasting everybody else's time in the class. And I was like, well, okay, sorry. And then, of course I dropped that class, but then, Seth Rogen comes out with Sausage Party. I came up with this in like 2013, 2014, and he came up with it, or he produced this at very similar, timelines. So not to be like, oh, fuck you, Seth Rogen, but really to be like, I had a teacher actively tell me I was presenting a bad idea when I was presenting something that just made, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's just like, so, the teachers are not perfect people, and they have their own psychology, and they have their own biases and stuff. And if they don't like you, or if they're having a bad day, they'll just shit on you, and it has nothing to do with you as an individual, potentially, so that it just delegitimizes again the idea of the role of a teacher, because it's like, well, if you're just going to shit on me, and not constructively, if you're just going to tear me apart because you have expectations that you're not telling me about, it's like all of that is your fault, and I will not suffer for it, and there's no way to control that once you're in the school, because you just have to bow down to the teacher and just do what they want. So it's really it establishes, even further, that master-slave dynamic that we experience when we're at work, and we experience, all going through high school, middle school, and elementary school. And then, they just continue it in college. But then, you get to college and you have this level of freedom. So if you just participate, it doesn't really seem like they're forcing you into this funnel, but the only way you pass is if you force yourself into the funnel. So it's really interesting, because the psychology of people participating in something that's going to pay off later, they'll ignore the red flags around them because they're focused on the future. And that's a really dangerous place for people to be, because if you're not paying attention to what's around you, people can just hold out a carrot in front of you, and you'll just keep chasing it. And it doesn't benefit anybody, and it's just an illusion. It's a way for the individual to not be responsible in the moment, and to really promise good stuff later based on you just getting a piece of paper that actually doesn't qualify you for anything. It's a qualifier. But being an effective teacher or speaker or anything like that, comes from you actually having knowledge about how to interact with people and how to effectively communicate. I could be the smartest person in the world. You can be Elon Musk, but he sometimes struggles to communicate. He's a little robotic. He's a little not empathetic. Which is fine. He's him, and that's who he is, and that's fine. But it's like you wouldn't go to him to be your doctor or someone to listen to. Maybe you would go to him to be a doctor, but like to tell him about your deepest emotional problems and have him be like, yeah, that's pretty bad. Why didn't you get over it? Like it's just like, whoa, just that sharpness. It's just it's something that the school doesn't do anything about. It doesn't tell you that you need to be effective at communicating with people, or you need to be effective at listening to people. No, it's just do what I'm telling you to do, and if you do it, you're a good boy. And it's like that's too simple. That's just fall into the dogma, and then you don't have to think about anything. And like it's just that's what it is. It's just a conditioning system. So, yeah, we can have these debates all day, and I, again, still believe in the use of university, but really the fact that nobody's doing their own individual study and they're all just trying to become part of these bigger firms that already exist, again, points to the psychology of people that are participating in school systems. So, yeah. And at this point, I have to say that I cannot diagnose anybody, because I'm not trained, and, I don't want to be harassed because I'm trying to give medical advice, because I'm not trying to give medical advice. This is specifically, I can't recommend pills. I can't do anything like that, but I can divulge to you a version of a psychological analysis that I myself use, being someone who's interested in psychology. Yeah, just or showing people how my thought process works, is it's a psychological test for me. And then I just think it shows people how to sort of epiphatically break things down from where they're presented to you, and to look into the meanings, the psychological meanings, or the implicit implications. Yeah, what's implied, going beyond the surface and going inside of whatever's presented to you. So that's what I'm trying to do now. So once you get into psychology, there's and you start interacting with people, you notice that people are full of fear. Most of people's issues are because they're scared of something. They're scared of regardless of if it's legitimate or not. The fear is always there. And once you understand that actually fear is always there, it doesn't matter if you're super rich, it doesn't matter if you're super successful, fear is always there. So it's really being interested in psychology. If someone's trying to get you to not be afraid, I would say they're not really actually interested in psychology, because they're not admitting to you that you cannot get rid of the fear. You can drown it and make it so that you don't pay attention to it, but it will always be there. So it's more of an acknowledging your fear and letting it be the rocket booster behind you that just pushes you through everything. And instead of letting it be what's in front of you stopping you from doing things, it's what's encouraging you. And so it's a realigning, and and just on that basic level, you can detect that most people that go to psychologists are not getting this kind of information. So it's like, well, all these practicing psychologists are just continuing, they're just giving people, medicine, and just telling them, these, oh, we can fix you, we can make it all better and make all the pain go away. And it's like, no, there's no subtracting pain. It's a reorientation of how you're interpreting what's going on, and that's psychological work. And so there's no real market for that, because it's basically the psychologist's job to say, hey, you're responsible for how you perceive the world, so perceive it differently. And like, that's the message, so it makes sense that people wouldn't want to hear that. But then also it's just like, right, so we've just got this whole industry of pseudo professionals that don't actually try to heal anybody or improve anything, because they're just like directly miscommunicating their even goals. Yeah, it's pretty scary. Once you get into psychology, you'll notice just like the huge holes just in people's logic. People will say something that's biased, like, this is the best, whatever. Like, I'm in Michigan, Michigan is the best state. It's obviously like a a gimmick, but like there, because I say best, it's like obviously subjective, you know. It's like, so anytime, you know, people will actively participate in conversations saying things that are like that, like they're just personal opinions, and they believe that they'll present it like it's a fact and like it's a, you know. And it's like, that doesn't just happen on, you know, the street amongst, you know, street people. That happens at the highest levels of these super wealthy organizations, because everybody's basically the same in that way. That's just the way that, you know, people cope with existing. So being extremely biased, especially as someone who has a piece of paper that thinks that they're smarter than everyone, you know, that person's going to be extremely biased, and they're not going to acknowledge it. So yeah. So overall, the psychological system that I often use, there's different ones, but generally I'll just refer people to the Emerald Tablet, you know, of Hermes, and that's basically where I got my revelations. You know, and then just, you know, personal experience of just interacting with people, experiencing being misled, and then recognizing what, like, the red flags that I kind of just pushed off, because I was like, you know, I'm just trying to participate. And then, you know, I end up being misled, and then looking back and trying to find those things that led me to be misled, you know. So yeah, the psychological system I use is, I would say, generated off of the Emerald Tablet, you know, and then it's got my own sauce in there. So but really, the idea is to find a system that you can use, that not that explains everything, but that transitions, that helps you transition your fear to its proper position, you know. Because in any given situation that you're going to be in, you're going to experience psychological fear, because, you know, you don't know everything, and that's the basis of fear, not knowing things. So it's really any psychological system that you use, or the goal of using the psychological system should be to put the fear behind you, you know, and not to pretend that it doesn't exist, and not to you know, yeah, to, like, self-murder yourself in that way, you know. It's more of a stepping into your actual feelings, and using your feelings, you know, for yourself, you know, instead of, oh, I just keep feeling and I just want to be numb, you know, instead of going into the numbness, you know, because that's what they're pushing people into, giving people pills and stuff. You know, you act on those emotions, you know, and you don't harm people necessarily, but, like, you know, you use the emotions as your emotions as the basis for your actions, you know, instead of being upset that you experience emotion at all, you know. So just integrating in yourself, and any psychological system that you should be, or that you will be using, should be trying to encourage that to happen. And if it's not, you know, I would say it's a pseudo psychological system, and it's more of a it's kind of like a grift, where, you know, there's a promise of health and freedom, but all they do is just numb you and say, okay, now you're done. And there's no real inner work. There's no changing of the individual that is required for the problems that they're having to stop happening. So yeah. So me as an individual, I've gone to, you know, doctors and whatever. Was diagnosed, you know, a couple of years ago with generalized anxiety, or no, generalized depression and major anxiety disorder. And then, yeah, so, like, when I say making these videos wouldn't have been possible, I literally mean I wouldn't have been able to be on this camera. It would have been painful for me to look at myself, you know. But you know, taking the knowledge that I've accrued based on, you know, just being interested in general occult things, numerology, of course, but then also just being interested in psychology. You know, I am on camera now. I've made this is the 12th video, and I really, you know, To me, yeah, psychology, amongst other things, people in my life and stuff, it's one of the things that really redirected me away from, the nihilism that kind of is inevitable, because I still kind of admit to being a nihilist, but I say an optimistic nihilist, so it's not that there's meaning inherent in the world. It's that you are the generator of meaning. So it's accepting that nihilistic premise so you can communicate with nihilistic people. But then you turn it on its head and you're saying, and I determine, I determine everything. So for you as an individual, you determine everything for you. So it's just really walking into that, and psychology did that for me. It led me directly to it, and I haven't looked back, and it's been huge. Generally, people like Ayn Rand and Otto Rank, and michaeltsarion he's the treasure trove of where to go if you're trying to have any of this kind of knowledge. He's the man that's done the research. He's about as close to a scholarly person as you can be without having gone to college or without having a degree. He's really, really good. So if you're looking for sources or resources, go to michaeltsarion.com or unslaved.com. But yeah. Yeah, so the oh wow, I did it again. The basic psychological premise is that something in your past is haunting you, right? And the 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 public's understanding of what psychology is supposed to do is that the psychologist is supposed to like pick your brain and go into your past and pull out what is messing with you, and really analyze that and bring it to light, and that is supposed to dissipate it. Well, if you've ever had trauma in your life and then you've experienced oh, oops, I just remembered it, and then the waves of terror and anxiety that follow when you're thinking about something horrible that happened to you, you come to the realization that just pulling up things out of the ground that you buried on purpose, that's not the best, way to treat yourself, because it just induces anxiety. It doesn't improve your understanding of anything, and it kind of makes you feel like that whatever horrible thing is still going on or still happening to you. So I would say that's how I view psychology. So because I'm not a doctor, I'm not going to try and tell you how or what to think about, but I'm going to be more just giving you examples here in a minute of in the moment analysis, and by that I mean making attempts to detect patterns in our own thoughts and actions. And like that's the goal of psychological work. As an individual, you're trying to notice your own thought patterns and behavior patterns and try to determine what is causing those patterns to occur. Patterns that we perform in point out our obsessions, which direct and preface you with what you're looking for. As far as, you're not just going to pull something out of the ground and be like, oh shit, I forgot about that. You're going to, you have to align your body to prepare yourself to accept that horrible thing that you're about to dig up. So it's really more understanding why you act and think the way that you do, and then approaching it from a integrating point instead of a look at this bad part of me, I want to cut it out, you know, because that's, you know, the modern psychologist will definitely encourage that. And, you know, it's a knee-jerk reaction for people because of course you just want the pain to be over, but not integrating that part of yourself prevents you from being a whole person, because, you know, that pain is something that anybody who's experienced trauma feels, you know. So, you know, you're kind of spitting in the face of people that have experienced, you know, absolute horror, you know. You know, there's been the history of the world is so bloody and so terrifying that, like, these people in the past were not able to just go to a doctor and get numb. You know, they had to deal with every single day as it came. And, you know, they might go get drunk and do stuff like that, but, you know, there was no systematized numbing of the entire population, you know, that's sanctified and, you know, agreed upon by professionals, you know, that are paid to be in these positions, and they actively know, potentially, I guess maybe they don't, but, you know, it's hard to think that these people are so smart, but then they don't know what I'm talking about. So I think that's why I don't really like schools and teachers, because I feel like they're lying to you, like they know what I'm talking about and they just don't mention it, but maybe they don't know it, you know. I shouldn't assume, I guess. So yeah, I don't want to be flagged for medical advice, so I'm going to be using politics, the modern American politics theater that we just went through, and I'm going to go over the different mottos that the former president and current president, Joe Biden, are presented to people as their, you know, their slogans. So this is, yeah, and this will just be a basic mechanic of a style of analysis that you can use when people, especially in this instance, like when someone's presenting something as a motto or a slogan, basically being able to deconstruct it and see if it is conveying a message, or if it's just good sounding words that are put together, and that'll point out psychological direction of the person presenting that slogan. So you can kind of tell the intention of the person based on the slogan that they present. So one of Trump's big things was he just constantly was saying, build that wall. You know, he's trying to get the wall built along the southern border between Mexico and Texas. And yeah, he harped on that really hard, you know, and it's, to me, well, I'll come to that in a second. And then I'm comparing that specifically to Biden saying his build back better, you know. So what patterns are detectable in between those two? You know, these are opposing members of the political system, and they're trying to compete against each other. Remember that. So, you know, and now I'm just going to present to you patterns that I've detected, and, you know, the whole thing is to not only rely on what I'm telling you. It's to take these things and apply them to yourself, and if I don't make sense, you don't need to listen to me. It's just encouraging people to start being interested in these things on their own and coming up with their own systems that work for them. You know, but this one works for me. So between those two things, build that wall and build back better, both contain 3 words, so 3 parts, and they have the same first word. So, you know, they're coming from the same intention, basically. They're first, the initial thing that you get from both of these phrases is build, you know, which is, you know, we, you know, in America, our infrastructure is not the best. I know it's probably worse in other parts of the world, but, you know, especially like Michigan, we've got some garbage roads, you know. Gretchen Whitmer got elected off of, you know, fix the damn roads, and then they're still not fixed. And if you go in Ann Arbor, you know, they're working on the same roads every year, and they've got some of the worst roads. If you go like off the beaten path, they've got awful roads, you know. So we in America, we definitely seeing build as the first word is, you know, it's definitely encouraging from both candidates. And but from there, you know, the similarities, you know, it diverges. You know, there are three words, same first word, but then there's a complete divergence in what is being presented. So I'm going to break down the individual sayings. So build, as far as Trump goes, build is referencing construction or like creating. That build that wall. It's a directive. It's a specific. We're gonna build this wall. You know, we're not just gonna build general walls that, you know, that take up space. We're going to build the specific wall that I'm talking about. So it's a clear intention to build a specific wall, right? And then the idea of a wall is, you know, borders or defense or solidifying individuality. So breaking it apart into those pieces and then gluing together the interpretations of the individual parts. We've got construct, specifically individualism, defense, or borders. So specifically construct defense. You know, like an emphasis on defending yourself, or, you know, our own country. You know, not that I necessarily agree with this. You know, you know, there's not really a point of a border wall if we're only going to have one. I'm pretty sure there's like fences trying to get into Canada, you know, between the U.S. and Canada. So, you know, I don't think that, you know, countries can exist without borders, but, you know, I don't necessarily think that, you know, it's necessarily important for individual nations to be willing to, you know, kill people at the border if they, you know, cross over. I don't think we necessarily kill people, but anyway. Yeah, so that's breaking down that Trump saying. And then Biden's, the Build Back Better. Here is where... So it's not that I'm pro-Trump. It's just once you get into Biden's psychology, you notice, like, Trump is telling you exactly what he's going to do, and that's what he's going to do. And you might like it, you might not. But he's telling you what he's going to do. Now, in Biden's, he says build, which, again, construct, back, referencing behind, or a return to before, generally before Trump, but a return, like build, construct the old world, basically, better, greater than previously. So construct what was before in a better way. Or, you know, you can take better as someone who bets. So if you take it as someone who bets, it's like, well, okay, so Joe Biden he's someone who's going to be potentially risky, and he's going to put a lot of eggs in one basket, you know, if you want to analyze specifically the word better. But then once you abstract and then reconstruct, you get this kind of word jumble. So Trump's message is polarizing, you know, because it's like, you know, just it's very racist seeming, you know, because we got to keep these people out, and we got to build a strong wall, and, you know, it's very polarizing because that it's something that people feel strongly about. But then Biden's message is, it's not really, there's nothing conveyed. It's build back, so return, so construct what was before in a better way. And it's the back and the better cancel each other out. So it's, if you would say build a better tomorrow or build back today, you know, like there's different ways you could combine these words, but when you say build back better, the back and the better stop each other from meaning anything. Because the back is referring to what was before, and then better means better than it was before. So how can you return to what was before if you're going to make it better? Because that implies change, so it won't be what was before. So it's this, based on this level of analysis, it's a meaningless phrase that doesn't tell you what that it means. It doesn't, Trump's is build that wall, and I'm going to go through MAGA, but like build that wall tells you specifically what he's going to do. He's going to build that wall. Build back better references nothing. It has no direct imperative. It doesn't tell you what's going on. It's just a slogan, so that's kind of terrifying. It's not that I'm pro Trump and against Biden. I didn't really vote. I was for Bernie in 2016, and then I guess I just more identified with independence, and I just didn't vote in this last current election because of COVID and everything. Oh no, actually, the registration date, I registered too late and wasn't able to vote. Yeah, that's all my fault. So, and then I'll go over MAGA. That's a little more popular than the build that wall. But create. Trump's always talking about creating America. If you're from America, then America's going to be your home. So make your home, create a home, great, impressive, or the best. And again, to return to what formerly existed. So the MAGA, being MAGA makes it a catchphrase. You can just say MAGA. But I would think, again, make America great would make more sense, but it's also like old English, so it wouldn't necessarily work because people don't speak like that. But so once you break it apart, you get create the best home like we used to. Create our best selves like we used to. So it make America great again. Make our identities as impressive as possible. Make our sense of belonging as great as possible. Make our country as impressive to the world as possible, as it used to be. So again, this now this is kind of a bit of underhanded psychology from the Trump side, because even though it's a more positive message, it's combining forward action, like make America great, and then again kind of it's kind of reductionist. It's kind of backward stepping, because it's implying that there's been something, America was great, and then there's this period of a lack of greatness in America, and we're trying to go back to the period when it was great. And that's a little bit of an underhanded kind of attempt to convince people that there ever was a time where there were no social issues, that we weren't dealing with these things, and that a specific individual can just go in and be president and just fix all of these things and return us to the time where wages matched productivity and everything was cheap and stuff like that. It's a kind of a gaslighting of people, because generally people don't understand anything oh man about like money systems. Like they just use money and they don't really know anything about it, and they don't understand that everything was cheap at that time because there was less money in circulation, and that's the basis of how money works. It was a little different, you know, like in the 50s, because we used the gold standard, and the gold standard limited the amount of money that could be in circulation. You know, but then Nixon took us off the gold standard in the 70s. So, you know, without pointing out that that happened, you know, Trump's just like, yeah, I can return us to the before time, you know, without directly referencing why we got into the place that we're at. So it's just like he's claiming to be, you know, the chosen one without directly communicating what he will change. So it's kind of it's definitely a patriot push, you know, all those people that believe in the, you know, sanctity of America, but America's fallen into, you know, darkness. It's just like, yeah, that's a pandering to those type of people that you know, that don't agree with the way that the culture's moving in any sense of the form or any sense of the word. You know, they just don't agree with any of the social justice that's going on. They just see everything as pure evil with no good at all. The MAGA is something that would directly speak to these people, because that's what they believe and that's what it's communicating. So, one second. Yeah, so in these examples I just gave, the patterns that we're looking at, or the intention that we're looking at, is merely based on the syntax. So the words that they use in the mottos is just what we're looking at, and, you know, it really doesn't have to do with that individual person. So it's not like Trump came up with, you know, he may have, but it's not like these guys specifically came up with these slogans themselves. So we can't really see these groups of words as representatives of these individual politicians or presidential candidates, I guess. But you can see it implicative of the stance of the supportive group around whatever individual. So either Trump's team or Biden's team, the supportive administration that backs them, they're more in charge of the messages that are communicated. And when you know, analyze basic syntax under that understanding, you know, it's more, what is this administration trying to communicate? You know, so it's not really what is Trump trying to communicate secretly, you know. It's like, no, not QAnon, no, you know, QAnon they you know, they're as anti-psychological as you can get, you know. That's just falling into a mysterious online doctrine, so you know, that comes from nowhere. You could say the same thing about me, but you can see me on this video if you're watching it. If you're just listening to it, you could see me. So I won't hide my face. Yeah, so anyway, so syntax matters when you're talking about these administrative groups, because that's the only way that you understand how they're communicating. Because once you see how they're communicating, you can see beyond what they're communicating, and you can see into the intent, which is what we just broke down. So you know, and not that either one of them has perfect intent, but that you know, Trump's messages are a little more clear and they're a little easier to understand. And Biden's, I only did one for Biden, but his Build Back Better does not lead you anywhere. It's just like, it's just something that you could say because you need to have a slogan, because you just happen to be doing this thing and everybody's got a slogan, and, you know, it just kind of fits that role. So it really shows a more of a, yeah, we just do what we have to, which is, you know, what I'm complaining about, you know, people that go to school. So most of these people are probably pretty liberal people that went to school, you know. They think, you know, we can just have a slogan, doesn't matter what the slogan is, and we just have to have one. You know, it's like the salesman that doesn't actually care about the people he's selling stuff to. He's just trying to make money off of people. So he's just going to put out, you know, he doesn't care what he's selling to people, just going to snake oil salesman, you know, just going to give you whatever and don't really care what happens, you know. I'm just trying to get the money that you have, and that's it. So I'm going to say whatever it takes, you know, for you to trust me. And since people didn't like Trump so much, you know, they didn't really have to say anything, so they didn't. And it's pretty obvious once you go through this analysis. So yeah, this analysis can be performed at any time, anywhere by anyone. None of these, these aren't hard, fast rules, but it's really just taking the time to think about what's being said and not just taking the surface level words, and that's just and that's a psychological tool, because it's you allowing yourself to interpret, and it's not just you reacting to the fact that something was said to you. It's just an orienting like compass, sort of, where you can tell the underlying intent, even if you're going to just play along. It clues you into more of what's going on around you. So that fear and anxiety that we constantly fear or feel, it doesn't really make as much sense once you step into this kind of thinking. Looking for what is combination of words. Hold on, sorry. And so I'll give you one more example. So I've got this GT's Synergy Kombucha here, and right here, how it says pure, man, come on, pure, potent, and purposeful. Come on, camera. Well, whatever. So it says pure, potent, and purposeful, and then you look at these three individual words, and what are they trying to communicate to you through that? You can just see the words pure, potent, and purposeful, but what do those words mean to you? So pure means non-contaminated, or uncontaminated, basically. Potent, strength, and purposeful, full of intent. So a non-contaminated strength that's full of intent, and once you do that, it's, pure, potent, purposeful. It's just like, oh yeah, it's an alliteration, and it's just like, yeah, those are cool. But then once you take the time, it's the process of you engaging yourself in trying to turn those words that you read into different words. That process aligns you more with the intent behind what's being communicated, instead of you just being a sheep that's being pushed along because that's what everybody else is doing. So yeah, I hope this was helpful or informative or just interesting to watch. Yeah, if you guys liked the video, go ahead and hit that like, hit the subscription bell and the button, and I will catch you guys later.